You got to scroll
Down
on
the bottom of
86th Street.
Everyone ready? All right, welcome to the October 9th, 2024 Zionsville Park and Recreation Board meeting. Start off with roll call. Vice President Ryan Cambridge.
Here?
Secretary Michael Kaufman.
Here.
Chris Barksdale.
Here.
Kimberly Lane.
Here.
Chad Dilley.
Here.
Matt Milburn.
Here.
President John Slevich is here as well. All right, approval of September 11th, 2024 minutes. Everyone get a chance to review the minutes from last meeting? Any questions or concerns? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Abstaining because I wasn't present.
Okay. Michael abstains. Motion carries with one abstention. Next is public comments and presentations. Do we have anyone here that'd like to give a speak? Is there anyone online? Okay. Staff reports. Jared? Hudson?
Thank you, John. Good evening, Park Board. Just to highlight a couple of items from the superintendent report. Last month, we were awarded 366 milkweed plugs, and that was in part from a grant from the Project Wingspan program. So those plugs will be utilized on the northern expansion of the Big Four to reestablish prairie and pollinator habitat along our Lanier Trail. 2 benches were awarded to the park system from the Zionsville Parks Foundation as a part of the Boone REMC Operation Roundup grant program, and those benches were placed on the Overly Warman piers. So we finally have a seat out there. I want to commend our Director of Recreation Services, Mindy Murdoch, for piloting the Women's Pickleball League this fall. The 4-week program had both beginner and intermediate leagues for women in our community, and it filled up very quickly. It was successful, and we will look to expand our pickleball programming into 2025 and beyond. Also commend our special events coordinator, Megan, for pulling off a swift event for the Eras Tour as we transformed Town Hall and allowed 90 participants to get their Taylor on and then go for a themed bike ride on the Big Four. And on that same day, I also want to commend our maintenance team for their quick response after Hurricane Helene. We had several trees down throughout the entire park system, and I just commend their quick action of getting those off trails and out of parking lots and allowing the public to get back out there. So just want to appreciate that. That is all from the superintendent report.
Thank you, Jared. Director of Recreation Services, Mindy Murdoch. How you doing, Mindy?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing great, thank you.
All right. So September rolled around. We had a little over 1,000 walk-ins to the Nature Center. Probably our biggest thing is now that we're back into the school season, as we are starting to pick up a lot of school programs, scout programs, and other private programming. So we ended up with 164 attendees for various things from Zionsville Garden Club to going out to Pleasant View Elementary for their kindergarten to a couple of private birthday parties and so on. We are sad that unfortunately we had to cancel on September 27th. We're going to have Indiana Montessori Academy out. It was first time for them. But unfortunately, that's right when the hurricane came through, and we unfortunately had to cancel it. But they gave us, really good reviews on we had everything. They felt very organized and ready to go, that we corresponded with them well, and hopefully we'll see them in the spring. So Just a couple highlights on some different things. We are continuing our Advanced Indiana Master Naturals. Actually, tonight is the last one for that series. So been very well attended for those. I led a teacher workshop with Project Flying Wild. So we had a small group, 9 attendees, but that is just one of 2. We're going to be doing an early childhood one in November as well, and that one is almost fully filled for the November one. And those are in coordination with DNR, so they are covered fully by grants through DNR, so we don't have to charge participants to attend those. Like Jared had said, we had our Women's Pickleball League, so both the beginner and intermediate, we had 16 attendees for those for 4 weeks. And so I think everyone had a lot of fun. We'll be sending out a survey, kind of get their information on things we might be able to improve, looking at different times, days, different kind of, whether we look at co-ed, things of that sort. So hopefully in the spring, we'll be able to add a few more leagues into that mix. And then to wrap up with our outreach and events, we did our last park and play at the Zionsville Farmers Market, which was well attended. Of course, Era's Trail Tour, and then we had a concert at Mulberry Fields that was free through the Be Local magazine that sponsored that one. So if you guys saw in my document I sent you, the trail hopper is up and hopping. It's fully wrapped. I was debating on going to grab her because she's at the nature center and driving over here for everyone to look at her. But she's fully wrapped up. She is at the library if you ever want to swing by and take a peek. We're going to be using, we're starting a monthly series similar to like the Creek Stomper, but it'll be Discover Your Backyard, which is the old slogan for the Nature Center. And we'll do little outreaches to the parks with different activities that families or people can drop in on that fit with the seasons. And then, of course, she'll be doing outreach as far as next year with birthday parties and special events and things of that sort. So, and then lastly, me and naturalist Sierra Stewart attended an early childhood play summit up north through the Indiana Parks and Recreation Association on September 23rd. That's all I have, unless you guys have any questions.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Park Attorney Amy Noonan, you have
All of
anything?
Not other than what will be addressed under new business and old business.
Very good. All right. Next on is the Turkey Foot Nature Park pedestrian bridge construction documentation. Jared?
Thank you, John. Within your packets, Park Board, you will have seen construction documentation related to the Turkey Foot pedestrian bridge over Eagle Creek within Turkey Foot Nature Park. So as you recall, earlier this year, we began design and engineering and permitting for this project and have moved to this point where it is now ready to bid. Upon your consideration and approval, we would advertise for bid the base project and look for a November 13th bid opening and potential award at our November meeting. So the project entails removing the wooden approaches on each side of the bridge and then replacing those with a new precast concrete boardwalk that obviously will have more longevity than the lumber that's on site, easier to maintain with pressure washing, and provide a better grip for both cyclists and pedestrians and strollers and everything else due to the wet conditions that prevail in that area just because it's shaded and close to the creek. So a great repair and resolve for some issues we've had for a long time at the bridge, and happy to answer any questions related to the base project.
Documentation looks good as always from REI.
So this is with BF&S.
BFS, I'm sorry, BFS,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
And I will make note, so earlier this year, the Park Board was inviting input concerning golf carts in this area. So this does not supersede that conversation. That'll be forthcoming. We've been working very closely with the town council to determine a framework for how we will move forward with that request. So those should be on both entities' agendas in the near future, and dependent on those resolutions, we would incorporate any necessary changes into these designs. So we really just need to get the base project out for bid and under contract before the year's end.
Does anyone have any questions about these documents?
I'd make a motion to authorize Jared to put the project out to bid.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right, next is the Mulberry Fields concession stand construction documentation review.
So I'll share a couple images because this is a little bit more exciting than a bridge. So as you also recall, we've been working with Runsdell Ernstberger and Associates as well as Delve to develop a concession stand and restroom for the Mulberry Fields Park. So these are some conceptual renderings based on the materials that will be utilized for the exterior, wanting to both match the aesthetic out at Mulberry Fields Park, but also have its own defining characteristics. So just some southern and northern views about how the concession stand window would be, as well as the restrooms on the south side. You can see the shelter A right there. That's the first one as you drive into the park, would be closely associated with this. So this is kind of an overall site plan. Again, you can see shelter A here, and we would develop additional sidewalk to allow patrons to move from shelter A to the concession stand, as well as coming off the general perimeter sidewalk as well, and establishing a route from the pickleball courts to the concession stand / restrooms as well. Let me just zoom in here real quick. So kind of looking at that footprint, the public-facing concession stand would allow for staff to prepare food and clean any dishes or anything like that behind the scenes, as well as refrigerator storage. There's also a 10 by 10 storage to the west of that concession area that would be available for both our park operations or youth sports that need storage or anything like that. There is a family ADA restroom that would have all accessible features, as well as an adult lift table. We have our mechanical room that obviously our staff would need to utilize, and then a men's and women's restroom as well. So with your consideration, we would also like to move forward with advertising this as well, and also attempt to award with a responsive bid by year's end.
Question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I love the adult size lift table in the family bathrooms. Are there still going to be changing tables in the two, in the men's and the women's?
Yeah, I believe code requires it in each
Okay.
one as well, but those will, yeah, for infants.
Thank you.
I saw something just when you, the image coming up on, because the roof being so heavily sloped, is there, like snow, will there be like, I forgot what they call them,
The ice.
ice dam, help stop the ice dams or help, because it's a pretty steep roof and that's a metal roof, so.
Yes, there will be.
Okay, I just didn't, I just looking through here, just wanted to make sure I saw that, so, very good.
I don't have any questions about the building specifically, but I think it would be helpful when you come back with proposals that we're just reminded of funding sources, funding amounts in the appropriate form and fashion, just so we understand from a stewardship perspective as we look to execute on these types of projects, this and the bridge project. We just know where the funds are at and how we're tracking compared to the funds.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
One thing I was just wondering, so would the concessions be ran by the Parks Department, or would that be looking to like youth group or groups?
We would work through that, but I think we could have my primary focus would be to have it run by the park system so that we maintain that control. There's enough activity at that park that we can, Wi-Fi's there, we can do computer work when there's not a rush, and I think it's going to be highly successful.
Mm-hmm. Without doubt. Anyone have any further questions on this? Do we have a motion to approve the construction documents for the Mulberry Fields concession stand?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right, next is Mulberry Field Sports Field Agreement with the Zionsville Youth Football League.
Thank you, John. Speaking of that activity at Mulberry Field, so our Zionsville Youth Football League just wrapped up their normal practice and season out at Mulberry Fields, but they also have a fall league. So they have requested to utilize the Mulberry Fields with the lights on, since it's getting darker a lot earlier. We were able to grant that, so they have requested utilizing Mulberry Fields actually beginning this week through November 14th. We have the agreement in the packet. We are pending an updated certificate of insurance, so I would request your consideration to approve the agreement for renting out the lit sports field to Zionsville Youth Flag Football for a rate of $900, pending the collection of an appropriate certificate of insurance. I think I covered it all there.
Yeah. So do we have a motion for,
Quick question,
Yeah.
was that, what was the amount? I missed it.
Yes, it was 900, so we did add it this week to that. They're hoping to start practicing this week with the lights on.
So that covers the cost?
Yes, yep.
But there's an additional
Yes,
cost
so
for the
last
lights.
year,
Okay.
we revised our rates. It's $45 a practice to turn on the lights. It's quite expensive, so.
Okay.
But
I move we approve the usage of the ZYFL at Mulberry Fields.
pending the
Certificate of insurance.
certificate of insurance, yes.
Okay.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Ecological Services on Big Four.
Thank you, John. So recently, we have discovered an emerging threat in our park system. You know, there's no shortage of those, unfortunately, due to invasive species, as we talked about yellow-flowered teasel earlier this year. But this is tree of heaven, which is not prolific throughout our park system. Really, we've treated it in the past, I understand, before, years ago, and there's a couple emerging now. So this would be for contract services through Ecologic to treat portions of the Big Four rail trail between the Nancy Burton Trailhead and the Oak Street Tunnel. That's where we've identified these clusters that are emerging. So the reason tree of heaven is so difficult in a specialized removal is because once it is attacked or cut or anything like that, it goes into distress and starts shooting out underground shoots that just make it proliferate and be a problem in the future. And the reason we're really trying to get ahead of this is because it's the perfect host plant for spotted lanternfly. So that's another invasive that's actually an insect that's heading our way. It's been reported in Boone County, and to my knowledge, it hasn't been identified in Zionsville, but we want to make sure it doesn't have its host here either. So with your consideration to enter into a contract with Ecologic for that treatment in the amount of $2,808.11.
Do you think the widening kind of spurred?
There
because
is.
of like you said, because of the cutting and.
Yeah, I was actually chatting with our vice chair of the Boone County Invasive Cooperative, Joe Locke, and there are a couple of grandparent trees in our community that she's working with private landowners to try to address and, work through a cooperation to remove those trees, and they'll plant a native tree instead. But from those seed dispersals, that can travel up to 10 miles, so it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah,
So
Very
we
good.
are trying to remain as vigilant as we can.
without a doubt.
So how much replacement planting of something else do we do when we remove
Yep.
remove these invasive plants?
So usually when we have an aggressive weed wrangle where we're removing honeysuckle, that is a mass disturbance, and we do
Right.
try to replant the natives to take it back. But in this application, it's truly just a couple of individuals
Okay.
spread over this distance. But because it's such a specialized treatment, we just don't have the capacity right now to do that ourselves. But in this instance, we just let nature take over with things we want there.
Okay.
Do we have a motion to approve ecological services on Big Four?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Resolution to restate park rules.
Thank you, John. I apologize, Park Board. This is the third time the rules have been before you this year, but we just want to get all of our ducks in a row as we move forward with approving the rules at the town council level and getting that codified. What that allows is ZPD to enforce our rules more effectively. So we can establish all the rules we want, but unless it's codified, they can't necessarily enforce it beyond general existing ordinances. So as we look at this iteration of Resolution 2024-05, we have added two definitions. The first being motorized vehicle. So it is a vehicle that is self-propelled. The term does not include an electric bicycle or an electric personal assistive mobility device. So this is completely in line with what we have established already in our park rules. So we're just defining what a motor vehicle is. So this would allow the e-bikes that are permitted as a part of the state's overarching authority, as well as just define that ADA accessible vehicles would be allowed as well. The second,
To be clear, it is prohibiting electric scooters, is that correct?
yes, which is our current ruling as well.
Got it.
So what is that difference? Like, what is, like, is it a moped versus a scooter versus a e-bike?
All of it. So this is defining what self-propelled, a self-propelled device. So it's just consistent with where we are right now. Should we want to consider adjusting those rules in the future, I'm happy to have those discussions. But at this time, you know, motorized longboards and those scooters you see like downtown Indianapolis, those are all technically not permitted on the Big Four Rail Trail or any Zionsville trails, as well as golf carts. And again, this is just what's existing. We're just defining what motorized vehicle is.
Typically, the difference, though, between an e-bike and a scooter is that an e-bike is pedal assist and a scooter is not. It's purely electric.
Okay.
As would be like some of the mopeds, there's no pedal assist. Some of the electric dirt bikes, they're just purely electric vehicles.
So e-bikes do require,
The way that the statute's written, yeah, they're pedal assisted.
I think at some point we're gonna have to address the speed limits on e-bikes because they are getting faster and faster. And, yeah,
So, and so the electric bicycles types 1 and 2 both cap out at 20 miles per hour.
Okay.
So the difference between types 1 and 2, which are both permitted by the state of Indiana on any trail that a bicycle is allowed. So type 1s, they are truly pedal assist only, and you can't get electric momentum without pedaling. Type 2, there is a throttle, so while you can generate momentum electronically with your pedaling, you can also utilize the throttle. But again, that caps out at 20 miles an hour. And then type 3, which we haven't seen too many of yet, and they're not really permitted anywhere, are the electric bicycles that are pedal assist, but can go up to 28 miles an hour. So I'm not even sure that like eBoom in the Village is selling type 3s. I think they mainly stick to types 1 and 2. But we haven't really seen too many of those just yet.
So curiosity question, I know we're kind of going down a trail here, but just for my edification, yeah, no pun intended on that one. For my edification, so 20 miles per hour is kind of what the e-bikes are modulated towards? Is that what I'm?
They have a throttle that won't allow them to go faster than that, but you can self-propel
Yeah.
beyond that.
Mr. Kaufman, when you're out on your bicycle, approximately how fast do you go?
Don't perjure yourself.
And I guess
When I'm on the
I'm
highway-
asking that a little bit jokingly, but in all seriousness, do we speed limit actual bicycles?
So we have discussed that with ZPD, but unfortunately, that would be a very hard thing to enforce.
Yeah.
We just don't have the resources to have someone sitting on the trail.
Yeah.
It takes a pretty good cyclist to get above 20 miles an hour.
Okay.
Like when I'm on a fast road, I can get up to like 25, or when you're going downhill, you can get much faster.
Sure.
But like if you're not an experienced cyclist, and there's no hill, aren't any of our trail
To do
systems
that
where you
here.
could even get that sort of momentum.
Got it.
So I think I think that 20 mile per hour is a pretty nice limit. Because I feel like most people feel pretty comfortable if someone's going by, but when you start getting up into 25, I mean, it's amazing how much that extra 5 makes.
And we are working on a more robust trail etiquette signage package, so that's going to coincide with our wayfinding and just clearly define, our expectations of our patrons as far as calling out when you're passing, slowing down to slower users and things like that.
I was on the Big Four this weekend, and there were 5 guys on the one-wheel motorcycle.
Yep.
And, you know, they actually wear all protective gear and helmets because they can go fast enough where if they fall, they get hurt, which is also, you know, is an indication like maybe you shouldn't be riding past people with strollers.
Jared, do you guys have a relationship with the owners and staff at eBoom? I know they've been really good partners with us at the library, and since they are sellers and they're using, obviously, our trails.
Yeah, actually, they've been great partners. They've done bike clinics at most of our public rides, so they'll take a look at your bike, oil up the chain, and just make sure everything's working. They also gave us a great discount and rate when we bought our town department e-bike that we utilize to get to programming and do inspections. So
I just want to encourage local business. And
they're wonderful. Yeah,
they've been great. So.
Yes, absolutely. Moving down the rules update, so we also defined what camping was. So this is the use of a temporary tent, temporary structure, or motorized vehicle as a residence of dwelling for the purpose of living therein, as evidenced by but not limited to sleeping, eating food, storage of personal belongings, and or changing clothes in the tent, structure, or motorized vehicle, and or by the length of time an individual occupies the vehicle when stationary. Any determination of camping must be made by assessing the totality of these circumstances, and that relates to the addition of Rule 17, which would be no camping permitted on park property as defined in subsection A, unless prior written consent is granted by the board or superintendent. So we still want to encourage appropriate camping for our scouts and organized groups, but we also don't want to encourage unauthorized camping in our park system. We're just not built for that.
All right, anyone have any further questions about the amendment of the park rules? Do we have a motion to approve the new park rules?
So moved. Oh, second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. All right, moving right along. Carpenter Nature Preserve Declaration of Restriction.
Thank you, John. So as you know, the Carpenter Nature Preserve is well underway into design, and we are able to move forward with construction in the near future due to several grant opportunities that allowed us to not only get construction documents ready, but begin to move into phase 1. So one of those grants is the Land Water Conservation Fund, which earlier this year we entered into with the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. And due to all of those opportunities and the restrictions that come with grant programmings, we need to successfully layer the different restrictions that we'll place on Carpenter Nature Preserve so that they all play nice together. So if you'll recall, we were awarded the Next Level Conservation Trust grant for $3 million as a reimbursement for the purchase of Carpenter Nature Preserve. The Land Water Conservation Fund is $500,000 towards construction of phase 1. And then we also have the Indiana DNR's In-Swamp program, which will mitigate and restore the entire length of Eagle Creek as it runs through Carpenter Nature Preserve. So each of those programs have their own conservation easements or deed required language that goes on them. So the consideration tonight is for your consideration to incorporate the Land Water Conservation Fund grant deed language onto our existing deed documentation at this point, so that we can then work towards establishing the conservation easements for the other programs behind that. So the reason we need to do this is so they just layer appropriately. We're already entered into the Land Water Grant Program, so this language was coming at the end of the project. So we're just, the request is to place it at the beginning, essentially.
Do you have the language?
We do have the language, and I can put that on the screen real quick.
And this will most likely come in the form of a declaration of special restriction that I'll have you, John, sign and we'll record.
So the encumbrance language is as stated in Section 6 of the Land Water Conservation Fund Act, Public Law 88, 578, as amended. Property acquired or developed with fund assistance shall be retained and used for public outdoor recreation in perpetuity. No property acquired or developed shall not be wholly or partially converted to other than public outdoor recreation uses without the approval of the Secretary of the Interior. Approval of the National Park Service must be granted prior to any action taken. So this is encumbrance language that we've placed on several of our parks throughout the year. Most recently was Overly Warman Park, which we worked very closely with the DNR to ensure that its boundaries would anticipate any potential widening of 465, 865. So
this now does, I know there was some question before, this does now kind of, the language now matches?
yes, so this would be just placing this language on 171 acres of Carpenter Nature Preserve. So we did carve out 3 specific exhibits for all these grants. So the Next Level Conservation Trust would not allow us to have a nature center, but that is permitted in the Land Water Conservation Trust. But the White Oaks Common and whatever that becomes, whether it's a venue or an outdoor dining restaurant, was excluded from both grant programs because that's not a permitted use. So we were exceptionally thorough in our communications with DNR, so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, but what I was really meant was the language that we have in Overly Warman and such, that's for the perpetuity, that's all similar now, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yep,
yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. I think that was one of the questions we were reviewing once before, I think, so.
Yep. So before you tonight is your consideration to have our park board attorney draft a declaration of, was it restriction?
Special restriction, yes.
A declaration of special restriction to encumber this language and have the park board president sign that as necessary.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Very good. All right, last new business is Zionsville Golf Course proposal.
All right, we have some representatives from Zionsville National here in the audience that'll speak to their agenda item.
If you would, please state your name and if you're, where are you from, and address. If you're from Zionsville.
Paul Kite with, my office is Strongbox Commercial, and the address is 95 East Oak Street here in Zionsville. Thank you. Here representing Zionsville National, the private manager for the golf course. We've taken over this season, and part of what we have agreed to with the town is to reinvest into the golf course, and that also involves a participation with the town out of a fund that has been in place to manage the golf course and pay for improvements. So in particular, what we're talking about is some restroom facilities and a concession stand, much like what you're talking about for the park. And what we're trying to do is build a facility that is immediately on basically the top of the hill between the 3 and 4, right? Or 6. I don't know the course. I'm not
It's all
the
good.
6 tee on the 6 tee. So that's if you've played the course, it's the top of the hill. It's one of the few places that is not in the floodplain. So there are some structures there, a really old barn and an old building. The intention is to take those down and put up the building that you see on your screen. And then, here, can I get to the other one? You don't want to touch me.
Oh.
There you go. Thank you. So this is a very similar to what we would be building, and it's 2 handicap restrooms, and then a small room for accessing, have basically a concession stand. It won't be a lot of equipment in there for cooking or anything like that. It'll be hot dogs and snacks and things like that, drinks, and then an area that people can sit under and relax and all that. So ideally, it's overlooking the pond to the west. What hole is that? What hole is that where the pond is?
7.
7. All right, got a golfer. So that's where it would go. It's about it's probably between $250,000 and $300,000 because we have to run utilities to it in addition to the demolition. And I've got a couple handouts. I have to apologize. I don't have enough. So there's an existing. All right, I'll hand this out first. Let you guys kind of share this. Lots more.
Thank you.
Thanks. There you go. One more. So right now, to access this court, to access the shack from the town as opposed to the golf course, we want people from the town to be able to come access it, watch the golf, and make it more of a benefit for the entire community. Right now, there is a easement that runs through a home there that you can see. It's with so the home on the left, there's an easement. It's essentially the driveway for that home. And what we would like to do is to move that easement to the east towards the property line of the neighbor to the east of it and put up a barrier so that it would protect both homes. So there's already a fence there blocking the view to the home to the east. So we would put up another barrier. It could be a landscape barrier or a fence, and move that easement over, make it narrower, about 9 feet wide, so that you could get back and forth on golf carts or walk back to the what we call the snack shack, and make it accessible from the town. So people could go and they could watch golf, they could get a snack, they could sit around under the picnic table. And we've talked to both homeowners there. They're very amenable to it because it provides more privacy for them. Right now, the reason it's the driveway is that trucks were going back there, and they still go back there to put fuel into the tanks to run the equipment for the golf course. So what we want to do is move the fuel to above-ground tanks by the maintenance barn, which is further down, if you've seen it. And that maintenance barn is just outside of the floodplain, and it would allow us to service those. So now that the new cart paths are in, we can get back there with a vehicle to the maintenance barn and service the fuel from that and stop driving back and forth on what appears to be a private driveway, even though it's not, with fuel trucks, and just use it for pedestrians and golf carts. So that's the idea. What we're looking for is support to access, they call the 680 fund. I think that's the right term, the 680 fund. To access that, our lease agreement with the town allows the town to put up to $100,000 matching funds into the project. This is $250,000 to $300,000, so $100,000 would be from the 680 fund, and the balance would come from us. And we feel that this will provide better access for people that can't. The existing access. This is a whole other discussion we can talk about. The existing access for the clubhouse is very poor, and the facilities there are very poor. It's a much bigger project that we want to tackle some years down the road. We have to build up much more capital in our reserves to be able to do that, and it's a complicated thing because it's in the floodplain. So there's getting the building high enough, getting permits to build in a floodplain. The DNR gets involved, and it's a long process.
The whole thing, yeah.
But this is what we want to make immediate impact as the private manager, and do what we promised to do, was to improve the course. And we feel that this is the most efficient way to do so. And that's my pitch. So love to talk to you about it.
Jared, how's that fund funded? Like, where's money coming from going into that fund?
That's a great question, Michael. So the Fund 680, which has now been changed in numbers just because municipalities like to do that. So now it is Fund 6607. Was an enterprise fund that is not a part of the tax base. It's a non-DGLF fund that has entirely been funded through the revenues generated through the golf course. So
Okay.
each season there in the black, those funds are deposited into there. And per the agreement with Zionsville National, there is essentially a rent that is collected each season that is redistributed into that fund. And after subsequent years, a portion of that will actually be diverted to the park system to provide support to our programming as well. So it's benefiting the park system in perpetuity as well as the golf course.
And how much is in that fund currently?
Yep, so currently there is $337,398.89 in that fund. And like I said, at the end of this year, 10% of green fees would be deposited in there 100%.
Do you have a rough idea what that works out to be?
At minimum, 50,000.
So it's like, okay, so.
So this is years of.
How the $100,000, how often is that at max?
Annually, so per the contract beginning in 2025, Zionsville National could request these funds. So your consideration tonight would be to consider the project, and if deemed appropriate and good utilization of those funds, we would incorporate that into next year's budget, which we are still developing right now for this fund.
Personally, think it's a great thing for the course. There used to be something there years ago. I can't remember if it was officially, but I think it's a great idea, and those buildings are need to go as well. So great. I think it's a great use of the funds. Also, if you have to do something with the clubhouse, there's something you still have concessions and stuff to deal with. Under construction issues in the future. So I think this is a win-win for the community and for the golf course, for everyone, so.
Okay.
And it sounds like basically you're just moving the street on the other side of that tree, right? The access is gonna go from that.
Right. So yeah, the access would be going between the driveway and the fence there to the right.
If they're, that's when, having them on board is fantastic too, so. Does anyone else have any questions?
A
Just
couple
want to make
comments.
sure we're not losing that tree.
We can get around it. We have to be careful anytime you're paving that close to a tree, so, yeah.
Question. Couple comments and a question. First of all, thanks for the work there. I think the course is in great shape, and just appreciate keeping that a gem in the community. So good work there. Kudos to you and to the team on that. Question just about utilization of funds. Of all your priorities that you're contemplating, to walk us through why the concession stand or other infrastructure prior, like when you think about the trade-offs that you have as a business owner, why the concession stand and why not other infrastructure priorities there?
Well, there's several priorities. So there's, drainage and storm, the drainage systems. We have to keep investing in those. The irrigation systems, we've been investing in those this year.
Okay.
So it's just the fact that we don't have handicap access is probably one of the biggest failings, I think, of the course. I mean, we have a handicap golf cart. I mean, if somebody really wanted to use there.
Sure.
Plus, being an old guy, there's if you're on one end of the course and you feel the need to go to the bathroom, it's better not to do so in somebody's backyard. So it's
Fair enough.
not that it's ever happened before, but
Great point.
Fair
but
enough.
it is we have a lot of seniors that use it, and we think it'll be a long-term
Sure.
benefit. I mean, and right now, I mean, we're the course is, I'd say we're 90-some% utilized. So it sort of just enhances the experience so everybody's been doing a great job. Pete and Mike have been doing a great job, and we just want to keep it going. And this investment that we would do next year, I think, show that we've committed.
Yeah. no, I appreciate that. And then, question, maybe this may be more for Amy or Jared. So let's say ballpark project's $300,000, we commit up to $100,000. What happens if the project comes in 350, 400? Is that on Zionsville National to pick up the delta, or like what's at risk for the parks fund?
So our max capital investment each year is $100,000.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So it'd truly be a step above as a partnership, you know, if that price came in higher.
Okay.
What's the timeline on getting this done?
The plan is to start it before the season gets underway, to do the dirt work and the rough work, so probably March of next year.
So it wouldn't be open for next season, but it would be open
I think by towards the end of the season, we should be substantially complete.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amy, what is the process like on our end, if any, as the park board, in terms of renegotiating that easement with the two private landowners?
It's actually held by the town.
Okay,
It
so
would be
that
their
wouldn't be
initiative.
our.
Right.
Yeah, because the park, the golf course is owned by the town, it's not by the park board. It's-
That's correct.
I would imagine the homeowner's gotta be one of the happiest people to get his driveway, or their driveway back.
He's been very, they both have been very kind and accepting of the fact that people are going to be using that. And I think everybody will be happy to have a dedicated private path and allow basically if you're out for a walk and you want to sit down and watch some golf, it'd be great.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, that was my next question. Having
I
open
used
to the
I
community
used to
is
golf,
fantastic.
but now I just like to watch people play. It's pretty funny.
As long as there's still privacy, so if I shank it on 7 into the pond, you've got my support.
No video.
Yeah.
One thing I'll add to just the provision in the agreement that we've been referencing that, you know, provides for this kind of matching fund request. It also says if public matching funds are used to fund a capital improvement, then the letting and construction of the capital improvement shall comply with Indiana Code 36.1.12.1, which is our public works project statutes. So, I mean, it would be considered a public works project. I don't know if you've talked about who would handle the bidding and everything, but that's just a conversation to have if we go forward.
And is this $100,000 that we are capped at per year, is this for, are we allotting $100,000 for 2024? Or are we preemptively doing this for 2025?
So it's not in the budget for '24. That would have to be an additional appropriation request. So I think it'd be, if the timeline works for Zionsville National, we could build in it right now, and then January 1, that would be available.
So what is needed from the board tonight?
Consideration to approve the project as proposed and commit $100,000 from Fund 6607 towards construction expenses associated with the structure.
So I make a motion to approve the project as proposed from Fund 6607.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right, thank you.
Appreciate what you guys do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
thank
appreciate you as well.
Yeah, can't wait to see it.
That's great. Okay, old business. 200 South Park improvements.
So as you'll recall, last month, we had partners from Pittman Partners presenting on behalf of a potential park improvement project that would adjoin their development in Union Township off 200 South. So this is located near the airport. It is the project of the reserve at Union Woodlands, and it would soon be before Plan Commission and then ultimately Town Council for consideration, whether it is approved or not. So I will read the memo that I received for you all to consider in addition to last meeting. So since our initial presentation before the Parks Board on September 11, 2024, we are now able to provide more information for the Parks Department to make a decision on whether or not they want to enter into this partnership. As part of Union Woodlands, the Union Woodland developer is dedicating a minimum of 35 acres of property to the park system along with the entry road off of 200 South that will allow access to the property. So that is a commitment of the prior project that has already begun. So regardless, the park system will inherit at least 35 acres. If the reserve at Union Woodlands PUD is approved, the Union Woodlands developer and the reserve at Union Woodlands developer would utilize the park impact fees that these developments would generate in the amount of $1.7 million to build a sports park as shown on Exhibit A. I will pull that up for us again. So as you recall, the exhibit shows the four-field synthetic turf baseball diamonds that would be utilized with the hopes by Zionsville Little League, as well as 8 pickleball courts. The sports park would consist of 8 pickleball courts, a 20 by 20 shelter in the pickleball area, 375 parking spaces in a parking lot, and 4 baseball, softball fields with concession stands and public restroom facilities. The use of the park impact fees funds in the amount of $1.7 million would also join a contribution of $300,000 from the Union Woodlands and the reserve at Union Woodlands developers to be utilized to build the park project. While the land would be owned by Zionsville Parks Department, we would envision that the area west of the entry drive and the area south of 200 South up to the improved area would all remain in a natural state and not require as much maintenance. The only areas that would require the maintenance would be the pickleball courts, the parking area, and the sports complex. Maintenance of the pickleball courts would be provided by the Parks Department. The maintenance of the baseball, softball area would be provided by Zionsville Little League, and the parking area would be maintained by a cooperation between the two. While the cost to build the improvements is estimated to be $2 million, this cost is based upon the economies of scale of building this project at the same time that the reserve at Union Woodlands is built, which we anticipate would be a savings of $250,000 to $300,000 compared to these improvements being built at a later time by the Parks Department or the Zionsville Little League Baseball. The value of the overall improvements, including the value of the land, is anticipated to be approximately $4.5 million. So the board requested a little additional information, which was both the cost of the project, which was listed around $2 million, the amount of impact fees that would be generated between the two projects, which was $1.7 million, as well as the contributions from the developer, which, as stated, was approximately $300,000. I have reached out to Zionsville Little League, and they have agreed that should this project move forward, they would be willing to enter into an MOU and discuss the sharing of maintenance responsibilities for this complex. I believe the request tonight is your consideration on the overall project, and if the park board would be willing to support the improvements to this park pending the results of the overall PUD with the Plan Commission and Town Council.
If I'm not mistaken, I mean, I just feel like this is a pretty significant philosophical conversation too, because, I mean, as I understand it, you know, impact fees are there so they can fund the park system, right? And so, like,
We're diverting our funds, we're diverting it for this is what it is.
and I'm not, I want to say I'm like, take an agnostic sort of approach at the outset. Like, I don't have, I mean, I have an opinion, but that's not what I'm trying to present here at the moment. I just want to sort of set up the conversation to say, is it worth talking about, you know, like, does this set a precedent, number one, as future development comes online, where parks are being placed adjacent, you know, that there's an ongoing benefit, obviously, to this project, and I again, don't necessarily think that's good or bad. I think it's just something to talk about and think through, because I'm not articulating this well, but the yeah, I mean, there's also then, you know, another developer comes and say, okay, I'm going to give a, I mean, we always get to make the decision, of course, but I also worry that we set a precedent that then is hard to fulfill, or we get challenged on in the future.
Yep. And I could speak to that, absolutely. So there is a history of actually doing these types of exchanges. So Overly Ormond Park, there was a credit given for impact fees for the park, and then the Big Four rail trail improvements within Von Terra. as we're moving forward with the Wild Air community coming online, there's also an exchange of impact fees that'll be considered before this board. And recently with the Bradley Ridge estate, where they're committed to putting in over a mile of public trail along Eagle Creek, there's also the request for upcoming trading of park impact fees. So from an administrative level, there's obviously benefits to both sides. So as you develop impact fee programs, those funds can only be utilized for certain applications. So that's fantastic to reach your level of services, but as your population grows, so too do the ratios that you establish within that document. And just organic development that might happen in your park system might make some items ineligible. So one of the reasons we're able to move forward with the Mulberry Fields concession stand so abruptly is because we have impact fees that we need to utilize from the past that can be applied to that. So that was fortunate. However, every time we have a master planning process, the community asks for more trails or, more park shelters and things like that. And some of those items can't be funded by impact fees just because we already have so many. So you either establish a level of service that we can't obtain in our own operations to utilize the impact fees, or you set something reasonable and then just aren't able to utilize it in an application. So that's one way to look at that there are some restrictions with accepting just the cash from an impact fee transfer of a development. Another thing to look at is, as we build parks alongside communities, as those residents are moving in, they have expectations of what that park will be from the beginning, day one. So that helps, mitigate some of the fears that happen with change. So when we're introducing new parks into the community, the residents there understand and appreciate a certain style of life. So as, a public park may come in, they might not have wanted that as their neighbor. So if it's there on day one, that does assist with some of those conversations and can be a selling point for that community that you have a park in your backyard. So certainly a lot of ways to look at that conversation. I'm not saying that trading of impact fees is good or bad, but there are certainly advantages to both strategies.
Are impact fees typically, and I'm sorry I don't know this, they have to go to capital projects?
They have to be utilized in specific capital projects so that, I can share with you the 2022 impact fee study that was just passed. So that lists the level of service based on our population of basketball courts we should have or soccer fields. And so it polls our park system, and as we reach those ratios, we can't utilize those funds for those. But where we have deficiencies, we can.
Gotcha. Okay.
And in theory, park impact fees, just like you said, are used to keep the level of service the same. They don't increase the level of service. So typically, another restriction that comes with using those fees is that they're meeting the needs, the increased burden placed on the community by that development. So they're need to be located near or within that development, ideally. So you can't, it's difficult, and I think there are probably extenuating circumstances where you can do this, but typically park impact fees, you use them in the area that's being impacted.
Gotcha.
So when a developer says, look, we're gonna use these for this thing, and it happens to be in our neighborhood, that's, as long as the project works out on our, in favor, in our favor at the end, then that's an okay use of the impact fees.
Thank you both, that's incredibly helpful.
Absolutely.
I did, just for the group, I did go to the airport and talk to them. They said currently they've got 24 inbound and outbound flights on average per day, but on the busy days, we'll have 24 of each. So that's obviously increasing as well as things get busier.
I guess maybe this would be a question, is there anybody here, or you guys are here from the development group, right? Have you gotten clarification from the airport that the uses you're proposing within the extended runway protection zone, the future expansion, are going to be permitted? Because as I understand it, I did a quick overlay. not a
And
very
please state your
scientific
name,
one.
address.
Hello and good evening. For the record, my name's Steve Pittman with Pittman Partners, and we're the developer proposing this. So we've been, part of this project is partnering with Union Woodlands, and Union Woodlands is the 189-unit Lennar development just to our east. And so that developer's Platinum Properties, they'll be developing that for Lennar, and they've been in communications with the airport. And so there's a certain area that's to the north of where we're developing that cannot be improved. But the area that we're proposing That is allowed, but we're not allowed to put lights, can't put lights on the pickleball courts, can't put lights on the fields. And so there are restrictions, but what we're proposing is allowed.
Do you know if they will let you put a restroom building?
A restroom facility?
Yes.
Yeah, my understanding is that we could put the restroom building along with the concession stand. But we couldn't build, my understanding is we couldn't build a two-story structure there or a house.
Okay. And do you know on the lighting, was it a blanket restriction because it's lighting, or was it a height-specific restriction?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if it's a blanket restriction. I don't know if you could have like ground lighting, or not. I don't know that.
Okay.
I think it'd be helpful, I mean, it seems to me it'd be helpful to know if we are not able to do lighting, does that limit the use of those ball fields? Is that?
I mean, it does. But, and also presents somewhat of a challenge, for the rest of the facilities too. I mean, the parking lot, the pickleball, I mean, those are all things if we were to build those on any other site, we would, I don't know if we'd like the pickleball, I think I would recommend it, but we definitely would like the parking lot. And there's a lot of new, that's why, the reason I ask is, there's, with LED right now, the technology, you don't have to have a 120-foot pole anymore to light a pretty large area. So I would be interested in knowing if, exactly what their position is on lighting specifically. Because I think that to me, and I said this in the last meeting, I'm in favor of projects like this, provided we make them work in the direction that benefits everyone. By everyone, I mean in Zionsville through the stewardship of the park board. And with this project, I think I'm not personally concerned about sort of flyover and that kind of stuff, but not being able to light the fields is a big one. That if these fields were synthetic, or because they are proposed as synthetic, and if they were synthetic and lighted, that would increase the programming capacity of the Little League by twofold, I would guess. I don't know. So, I think that that's something I would be interested in learning more about. I mean, it appears to me that they all fall within the second runway protection zone that would come into effect when they extend the airport's runway, but not the current one, which is to the north. So I would just want to make sure that they are taking that into account too, and or if they let you build something there now, is that grandfathered in when that runway extends? So those are the two questions I have. I mean, otherwise I'm generally in favor of figuring out how to make this work. I know it's a need of the Little League. I had representatives from the Little League reach out to me after the last meeting. I think they were kind of surprised that we weren't, maybe more outright supportive. I think we just had questions, and this is sort of new territory for some of us. So, but I do think it's a project that they see as very important. So, but those are the two details that I'd like to know.
Okay, so the lighting, and then when they expand the runway, if that creates any problems?
Yeah, so right now the RPZ1, which is the existing runway protection zone, is outside of the property boundary to the north, and generally they don't let you build anything in an RPZ1. I mean, every single thing above ground requires certain approval, and vertical things over 3 inches tall require frangible bases, and there's just a lot of, and so I guess, but there are recreation uses are an exception.
Right.
But they have to be, so I just want to make sure that, that they're taking into account, or that statement that they made to you is not conditional on the runway not expanding, because I do believe it's slated to expand. And when it does, an RPZ2 comes into play, that will encompass all of the ball diamonds. So, anything that we would build, what happens then if they extend that zone, and maybe that's on them. But anyway, I just, so that's point one. And point two is, regardless of whether we're in it or not, what are their restrictions around lighting specifically? Would we be able to light a field if the light standards were below a certain elevation?
Right, okay.
And then we could have additional one, at a greater number of fixtures at a tighter spacing, but a much lower height, and still light the fields. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
But I do think that's something that we could figure out.
How long is the season for Little League? My kids are not quite
You
at
mean,
that age.
how late do they play, or how long does it run?
No, like, for example, in the summertime, I know from golf, I mean, it's light till 10,
Yeah.
30, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're not playing
So
that
it may
late.
not be an issue, you're saying? just when the
Yeah,
season's
that now if
starting.
they play
Baseball's
till the
all year-
fall.
It's all year round now, so.
Well, then that creates the issue is,
Well, not outdoors.
Not part of
I
outdoors,
mean,
yeah.
they're just finishing up their fall
Fall
season
Yeah,
season
now.
now,
for
yeah.
Little League, fall season's shorter than
And it-
spring season.
and it's
Spring
dark
season-
now at 8, right? So that's a big difference. That's why I
Right.
was curious.
Well, and fall season just wrapped up for them. Spring season is longer and starts a little earlier. So, you know, my kids played in both, and I don't know. I mean, we played a couple of games in lights or a couple of practices in lights, not very many.
So maybe it doesn't
But-
add much, and maybe it's not, yeah.
Well, but at the same time, it's one of those things where, you know, they have, you know, they're almost at capacity or over capacity with players, and it's because of field capacity,
Yep.
not coaches. So
Right.
if there were additional playing hours, they could, in theory, play more games because the demand is there, or more practices. So,
And I understand the lighting and on the field and having more hours to play for Little League, having been a parent with Little League kid, but I'm more concerned about the lighting in the parking lot, and making sure people are safe.
Yeah.
And that kind of liability and risk.
You know, one thing to add is, so all the houses right behind it have been approved. They submitted their plans to the FAA. They've been approved. And I know all the housing is going to have lighting on it. You know, they'll have coach lighting on the front and the back and that sort of thing. So I'm going to guess that you can have some sort of lighting, and it's probably limited. And we'll just find out what that is.
yeah, I mean, that would be, I would just be curious. I mean, unfortunately for us, the RPZ2 extension does end pretty much at the end of that court. So, you know, they may be able to have those things just simply because they're out of the future zone. But I'd like to know that. You know, what are their specific, you know, I think that would allow us to make an informed decision. You know, that's the only holdup I have personally is, you know, this would be the nicest field facility we have. You know, can we actually have concessions in a parking lot lit to code,
Yes.
minimum standards with safety lighting and that kind of thing?
Right.
And it certainly would be ideal if we could light the pickleball courts and, or, you know, maybe a field or two, if not all of them.
But it does seem like, from my understanding, is if for some reason that is a hindrance, that seems like there's a degree of openness to explore this even outside of the lighting concerns.
I mean, I think so. I mean, there's a need, I mean, we don't have a synthetic field in the system, period. You know, so that's a whole nother capacity discussion, because the Little League right now will cancel games if, you know, even if it had rained heavily that morning or something because of field damage.
Yeah.
So when you have a synthetic field, you can program that thing 24 hours a day if you wanted to. So even without the lighting, they will get increased field play beyond just the 4 diamonds, simply because there's more playable days in a year.
But it allows us to make a more informed decision.
Right,
Yeah.
but you know, and if, you know, if it came back and there was some way to figure out how we could light some of this stuff, I think it would be a home run.
Yeah.
But-
You know, that is one thing that they've shared with me on their fields, because they are turning kids away now, and they were saying one of their problems are the poor conditions. I guess they have, my understanding is Lions Park and then a park in Whitestown maybe that they use.
Yeah.
And they said there's even conditions where on a heavy rain event, there'd be like raw sewage. And I'm not saying Lions Park, I think it's the other one. And so like these fields would be professionally built, you know, crowned, you know, full drainage. I mean, it'd be a, you know, a very nice facility.
Yeah.
We've actually we've been consulting with the people that do all the, manage everything up at Grand Park.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about the synthetic turf is it's sitting on a bed of free draining gravel. So you can pour 10 inches of rain an hour on it, and it's all gonna drain through and pipe out.
So just to be candid with the team here, one, I do think that the Zionsville Little League needs additional fields. I've talked to some folks in leadership there too, so I agree with the team there. Two, this is not the place for it. The end of a runway, this, for me, my perspective, and we can continue to go down this path, but just my perspective, if we can't put lights up, this is not the right place for it. And there's a lot of land still yet in Zionsville. There's gonna continue to be a strong appetite to develop land in other portions of Zionsville. And I think if we're making a multi-decade decision 50 years from now, I think we'll come back to this and say, we could have found a better location with other developments that are going on. So that's my perspective coming into it. You know, it's nothing against you, Mr. Pittman. I think you've done great work in Central Indiana. You've added a lot of value to the area. Nothing against you or your organization. I just don't think this is the right place for this. And I do think Zionsville Little League needs additional fields. So that's a both and for me.
And generally, I don't think Union Township wants this right now. It's not something that's, I think that's in the right, it's not the right place as was mentioned, so.
And that's based on where, like, how are you getting that feedback from?
Through my constituents in Union Township, my
Yep.
neighbors. I live in, it's my backyard. I've talked to almost every one of my neighbors, and no one wants this in their backyard, so.
Can you share with us
Because-
what their
yeah.
objections, yeah,
Yeah,
what
what
is
are
it?
their,
Well, it has to do with the potential of the lighting, the embankment into the, increased traffic, obviously, is a big, they're just against the development altogether, not just the ball field.
Yeah, just to be clear, what he's saying his neighbors want is they want it to be corn and soybean. And that's what every planning, and I understand this is not a planning body, this is a parks board, but you're right, we've met with, I mean, actually, there's many people that are very supportive. And we'll have lots of letters that will show that. But your neighbors would say, we want it to be corn and soybeans, you're right.
And not just my neighborhood, there's also, the neighborhood that's next to us is the same, so I've talked to them, even though they're newer, they still, but.
Right.
But
Well,
when you-
we have to
but when you-
remember, I think it's
when
not
you-
our job
It's not our job to decide
litigate
what,
the
right,
development.
That's why I think we have the cart before the horse. I don't think there's anything that we can do here right now, because it's under the planning commission to decide what they want to do with that property anyhow.
Well,
Yeah,
So-
I think what we're asking, all of this would be contingent upon the plan being approved. We're saying, contingent upon the plan being approved, do you want this? Because if the Parks Department doesn't want to do this, then we change our plan entirely, because we wouldn't be using any funds for a park. So that's why we want to know, is this something you want, like, and Jared and I have been talking about this for quite a while, and in fact, several of you weren't at the last meeting, and I'd encourage you, if you can, to drive out to 131st and Shelbourne Road. We built 2 sports parks there. Basically, the Parks Department, Carmel Dads Club, and the Planning Department went to the development community, and they had the same problem that your town's having, and they were turning kids away. They asked the development community, hey, can you help? And the development community said, basically would go and look for floodplain land, or they look for wetlands, or they look for something that was of no value. And then we said, hey, we have an idea. If we can cluster units closer together and create open space, and then we could help provide these kind of amenities. And if you could drive over there on a Saturday, it's 131st and Shelbourne, go north, and on the east and west side, there's Mark Herman Fields and there's Pittman Family Sports Park. And, I would tell you, people of Carmel think that that's a real amenity, and the people that lived there when we first started it and were proposing it didn't like that idea either. And if I talk to them now, they've said it did not turn out, all the concerns and worries they had the way they thought. So, but anyway, so that's why we're coming to you first. And if you just say, hey, we don't want this, then we would probably, just start over on the planning of that whole property.
is this the only iteration of turning this into a park? Or could it be turned into other park use, but not
So
all
right now,
use?
this park is another development. They're trying to,
This is the green
They-
space
they
you have
wanna-
to allot
they-
as part of your
they're-
development.
Yeah, it'll just be raw land that'll be dedicated to, it'll be 35 acres that's given to the Parks Department as part of Union Woodlands
Okay.
without any improvements on it. That's what you would get once Union Woodlands is developed.
Okay.
so he wants to
They
do this
want to-
development on this property and.
In lieu of paying the parking.
fees.
What's the, Jared, do we have, and Mr. Pittman, maybe this is a question for you, but do we have an approximate value of the 35 acres of land? Because that's something, as again, and we talked about this at the last meeting, but as we're looking at this, there's a lot of pieces to consider, not only is it you know, I think you could make an argument, well, we're getting X million dollars to the impact fees anyway, we can just go and build this somewhere else with the X million dollars. But I think, Mr. Pittman, your argument is you actually can't build this for $1.7 million because of the economies of scale that your construction will bring to the table, as well as the land value, and then I'm presuming the soft costs that you'll incur in design and engineering and permitting. So do we know what that, you know, you mentioned it was maybe a $4.5 million project?
Just utilizing those numbers, that would put the land around 2.5. So does,
Yeah, just to comment on land value, I tell you, just north of us, Zionsville Schools just bought land for $60,000 an acre. And so you think about, they bought 60,000 an acre unzoned without utilities, to give you an idea of what ground would be worth with utilities.
And
So what we've talked about before at one point, Chad, I think you'd brought up like the destination park playground, right? Like if the lights become an issue and it's like, hey, is this good space for park, but not a good space for fields? Is this an opportunity to say, hey, maybe we can turn that into that destination park that Jared has told us is maybe too expensive for us at this moment? What are thoughts on that?
well, but I think well, I'm sorry, I don't think you're asking me, you're asking. Look, my wife would be so proud that I at least stopped.
Although, does
Never
that-
mind, look, I see the floor.
I mean, it's got to be both, right? Like, what the board has got to have an opinion about that, and then, you know, with your approach, do you feel like for whatever reason, the ball diamonds are the efficient way to do that, or is there openness to other ideas with that space?
and I think that's just a discussion between the priorities of the park system and the park board, as well as our community at large. So, you know, I will say that when I first got here in Zionsville, we met with Little League and they expressed their need for expanding. So that has very much been at the forefront of our thinking, and that's kind of why within the last 5-year master plan, we specifically had a survey out to our organized sports so that we could identify that need. So
Yeah,
I strongly...
just like Chad said, I think we all agree with that.
Yes.
But if it turns out to like, hey, with the lights and we're making this decision, it just can't work, is there openness to other ideas?
And another concept for this same footprint was proposed in the 5-year master plan. So we did master plan this site. You know, it was more of a nature preserve with walking trails due to the limitations of the airport, but that doesn't mean that a playground couldn't be incorporated. But again, is this the right site for a regional destination playground? That's for consideration of the board as well.
The only point I was gonna make is those would typically be lighted.
Right.
Like if you're gonna spend $2 million on a destination play environment.
But isn't all our parks close at dusk?
Except for Mulberry Fields, which has the lights on the sports. That is 11 p.m.
But we also just don't have any of those facilities either, right? So
Yeah.
like, they all do close at dusk now, with the exception of that and the skate park, right?
All of Mulberry Fields. Yeah.
Okay.
Does the potential of Little League being there versus a playground, which I don't necessarily think is a bad second option, mean less maintenance costs for the parks if Little League is willing to take on some of the, you know, that's just something else to consider.
Yeah, just, you know, looking at our 5-year forecast as a community, as a town, and what's expected to grow, I would not support this complex if we didn't have a partner like Little League that would be willing to assume the majority of those maintenance responsibilities. With our capacities, I do feel we can fund and support, you know, a parking lot and the open space and the pickleball courts. I think that's something we could accomplish with our existing staff, especially 3 years from now when we could potentially grow further. But definitely not a facility beyond that. So to your question, would a playground, could we support that? Yes, we could probably support a playground, but it is still 35 acres. In this scenario, I think it's kind of boiling down to the core question of, do we leave this as open space fallow land that'll be developed by our park system decades from now, potentially, just because of its priority in the list of other priorities? Or do we allow an opportunity to develop it now and come online to service our community? And that's a question for you all to really consider.
So, what you're saying is, if we don't do this, it's gonna sit there?
Absolutely.
There's no second
Yep.
option of partnering to do a playground?
I'm not saying there's not an opportunity to partner on a playground. I'm just saying that if we receive the impact fees for this, and it is not high in our priority list with all the other competing interests, but it is an opportunity for the future. Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking is, instead of building this,
Yes.
could you guys build, Y, right? Like, does it have to be this in order to get built out?
Yep.
Yeah, to answer your question, let me, just so you know the origination of this, how this started, I had met with your mayor and Kate Swanson, and we're showing them this project, and we have them show them the development that Union Woodlands talked about, that open space, and he said, I think it'd be really prudent of you to go talk to our Little League Baseball program, because they desperately need more space, and maybe something could be worked out. And so that was the idea behind it. So we went to Little League Baseball and, came up with the plan and designed this. But if you all said to us, I mean, I've gotten to know those people, and I'd like to help them, so I don't want to say I want to back out from helping them. If they're listening, I'd really love to help you guys. You've been great. But if you guys said to us, we want this to be a big playground area, and that's all you want. I mean, it's, really the decision-making rests with you all, not anybody else. And so if there's another need you wanted, then provided that the economics worked, we could do something else.
And I just want to know if there's other contingency options based on the feedback we get back after the lights, et cetera.
And, yeah, and I 100%, I love the use. The fields, especially if we can light them, are a tremendous asset to this community at large. And more pickleball fields, especially if everything that you guys learned from what we have can be incorporated into new plans, because I'm sure you have ideas. And if the lights can get worked out, this is not something I think it's a plus, especially since the only other land that we have in Union is the nature preserve, correct? And that's not going to be built out in any fashion for this kind of activity.
Yeah, this type of activity is not going to be permitted at Carpenter.
Yeah, so.
Mr. Pittman, have you, I guess, looking at the prior plan that you presented to us on the 11th, that showed the two developments and sort of the concept for the park and the open space, there's a bifurcating roadway and a connecting roadway in the north. So there's a north-south road that connects the southern development to 200 South, and then there's an east-west leg that connects to your development, I believe, to the west. And then the pinwheel and the parking are all on the east side of that parcel. Has there been any consideration to reconfiguring that to move the pin? At least it looks conceptually like you could shift the pinwheel to the northwest, kill off that access road, move that one to the south, so you'd be flip-flopping your cul-de-sacs on that.
Are you talking about the baseball fields or the rest of the development?
The baseball fields.
Okay.
So it would change where your cul-de-sacs are, right now.
But that development's already, this is his development, this is already been planned, already going.
Yeah, everything to my, everything to my south.
That roadway's existing.
Well, it's going to be.
Yeah, everything south I can't change.
Yeah, it's already
Okay.
tattooed.
Yeah.
This has
that's
been already
why.
granted, this is what's coming, he wants to develop that.
Well, so the roadway that goes through that parcel is already approved?
From what I understand, yeah.
North
Raccoon
to
Way,
south.
Great Raccoon Way?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the access road into.
yeah, and we're being told, that's another thing, we're being told that that's gonna start in October. And I've met with some groups out there that have said, we've been hearing that for a long time, we don't really know if that's gonna start or not. And I said, you guys, I'm willing to delay my plans till we know if that starts or not, because everybody I meet with, I say, hey, all I'm asking is that you have an open mind as we go into this presentation. And they said they will. And then it's only fair to me, it's only fair to them for me to have an open mind when they bring something back to me and they said, hey, Steve, that other development, Union Woodlands, that's been announced 3 years ago and it's never happened. We're suspicious that your development would allow their development to happen. There's something that's holding them up. And I said, well, I'm not aware of that. And I said, look, my belief is if that development doesn't happen, then my development doesn't make sense the way I'm proposing it. Because, and I'm getting into planning that you guys may not care about, but if you look at your comp plan where Lennar's putting 189 homes, your comp plan calls for that as open space. And then if you take the property I'm proposing, And if you go all the way out to 421, your comprehensive plan's calling for what they're calling is campus housing, campus development, campus housing. So you have the Lennar development of 189 homes. You got the property we have on 421 is campus housing, and the area you have in between your comp plan is calling for what they call agribusiness or agritourism, which in the development community, we say that's code for we don't want any development. Because nobody knows what do you do with that. And so, so we think that that development has to I mean, just to be fair with whatever, that development has to happen.
The Lennar development.
Lennar development has to happen.
And
if-
their access road to their development is that bifurcated north.
Yeah, they're going to bring that right through and take it all the way up to 200.
And there's no opportunity to change that.
Well, it's already been.
Change the alignment.
It's already been, construction plans are done and everything's approved, and they've been working on it for like 3 years, so it'd be a tough one.
Okay.
And the other thing is like, those guys absolutely don't need me at all. This was me going to them and saying, hey, I've talked to Zionsville, talked to Little League Baseball, we've got this property. And I've worked with those guys before, I have a good relationship with them. They were involved in the sports parks in Carmel, and they said, yeah, well, heck, we would do that, that'd be a great plan. And then the neighbors, by the way, that in your neighborhood that supposedly don't like the development, we've shown a trail behind that goes through the pipeline up to this area, and they've all said, I shouldn't say that, they haven't all said, several of them have said, hey, if your development happens, we'd like to get a connection on that trail and to be able to get up to the pickleball courts on our bikes and pedestrian standpoint. And the people in Brookhaven, same thing. So when you say all the people don't like it in Brookhaven, and there's a member on the HOA board that absolutely wants it to happen. So there are people that want it to happen.
Yeah, I'm not saying, but everyone I've talked to, so far, but I know there's
Are
always,
you
there's two sides to every
Are you in
story.
Countrywood?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Sean, have you talked to Sean Hitchcock?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. By the way, he's my partner at the farm.
And actually, your dad worked with my dad years ago, so.
Where?
Well, he was a CPA, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and I used to work for Rancho Alegre too, so.
Okay, so we have some history. We
Yeah.
didn't even know. Okay, good. Well, I hope he paid his bills.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, to me, again, taking should the development go there or not out of the picture and looking purely at the park side, this is an area of the town that's growing. This is an area that needs more parks and open space. This is an opportunity to get some, a bigger bang for our buck, but I think we need to make sure, if it's going to be considered for diamonds, and a restroom or, a structure, all these things that, I think at least on paper might be prohibited in the runway zone. Let's get a notice from the FAA that says, hey, your parcel falls within this, RPZ2, here are your restrictions, specific to structures and lighting.
Okay.
Because that will at least allow me to make a decision. And again, I don't know that it's still a no. I think
Okay. So if I came back next month, that would allow me to come back prior to the first plan commission meeting I'd go to. So that works for me.
okay. Yeah, I would get something from them that clarifies that.
Okay.
Because it looks like the whole thing is definitely in it. So if we find out we can't do, fencing or all, and I don't know how they would allow
We can do
recreational
fencing, but
uses.
they limit the height of the fence.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so if we could figure that out, I think that would probably be the next step.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. So,
Yep, we'll table that to the following meeting. So, if there are other priorities that we might need to discuss as a board, as a park system, I'd welcome those conversations as well in the next month, but we'll have more to come next month.
Thank you.
all right, next is Union Township land donation.
Kimberly, I'm going to have to correct you because this is an opportunity for our second park in Union Township.
Yes. Yeah. And that's one thing I was.
Happy to be corrected.
And then, one thing I was going to make a statement on about this is that to me, this park that we're going to talk about here would possibly be a better contribution for a ballpark, because it's right next to it's going to be next to a school. Right now it's landlocked, and we've got some years before we're going to get it. But anyhow, I think it's more, but anyhow, let's move on.
Yep, so no, that is an absolutely great point, but I do want to bring up that with your consideration of this 60-acre parcel, which let me pull up real quick for you all.
It's just a farm.
I thought they restricted what we could use it for.
There are, as with many of our gifts, as we mentioned, the Carpenter Nature Preserve earlier, there are deed restrictions that come along with these. There are visions that these gracious donors want to have ensured that they carry forward with their legacy that they're establishing. So just to recap, this project has been in development for a little over a year now. So the park system and the previous park boards were approached with a landowner that wanted to donate 60 acres, which is currently agricultural. So we did our due diligence to explore that and noticed that it was a landlocked parcel, so there were some challenges with that. Fortunately, through that due diligence, we did notice that there is a large portion of school property immediately adjacent to that. So that made this endeavor and this opportunity that much more worthwhile for our overall park system in the future, because imagining whether it's 50 or 100 years from now and there is a school there, just like our Zion Nature Sanctuary butts up to Eagle Elementary, there's that opportunity for symbiosis and community that would partner on the other public institution there. So we did partner with the school and reach out to them and request that they consider allowing us to have an easement on their land to get to our park. So again, very much like Zion Nature Sanctuary. So we have worked through the negotiations of those terms of that easement, and we now have a option for that easement, which is just awaiting John's signature. That's already been approved by previous park boards. And once ratified, we will have the option to procure that easement should we need it in the future, because we get this land donation. I hope all that made sense.
Jared, what are the east-west roads here? So the north-south is 900 east. What's the east-west road?
I believe that elbow is 125, and the one below then is 200, I believe.
Okay.
So again, there's no school presence here in this capacity. This is all future-based. The consideration this evening is for the park board to accept a testimonial transfer of this gift, which would be a part of the life estate of the donor. So we hope to not get it for many years. We're not in a rush to get it either. So just to have that opportunity in the future and your consideration for future park systems and what that could mean to this part of our community. So there are a couple of terms of this 60-acre parcel. So for the first 100 years, it would need to be known as Bobcat Nature Preserve. So with that title, you can imagine that it is a passive park. So it is to be rewilded and reestablished as native space. That does not prohibit us from putting a parking lot, a shelter, and a restroom. But other than that, the impacts to it should be pretty minimal. So trails.
Do you do an environmental study before you
We
are in this type of?
We have not done an environmental study on this. We are aware of a easement that bisects the property. There's a large utility that goes through it, which is not uncommon for our park system. But
It's the same overhead that goes through Mulberry Fields, actually.
Yeah. But as I stated, it is actively managed and farmed as agriculture right now, and will continue to do so for some time.
So we get the land, but we can't do anything but nature preserve with it?
That is the restrictions, yes. So again, I think this is very timely for you all to consider, just, not playing good, right, or indifferent, that a lot of our opportunities do come with the guidance that they want to have on them.
So this is, how close to Carpenter? I mean, this feels like a quarter mile away from Carpenter.
Pretty close to that, yeah. It's just down the road. Certainly an opportunity to have a future pathway system that connects both the school, this park, and to Carpenter. And
I would say, though, separate from the similar programming, that as Zionsville develops, reserving land for just
Green space.
habitat is critical too. So I think that's a role that parks plays is preserving that buffer space and that green space.
Absolutely, and considering this request, looking again at our 5-year master plan, despite all the bells and whistles and everything our community wants, passive recreation parks are still coming to the top. They want more nature to go explore. So that's the current attitude of our community.
How long is the agreement for again? Or how long would it have to be a nature preserve for?
I believe the nature preserve restrictions are in perpetuity, but the name Bobcat Nature Preserve is 100 years. And after 100 years, I don't know if we'd want to change that.
We
But that won't be
negotiate it
my
down to
decision.
95?
What's that?
Can we negotiate it down to 95 years?
So what is needed from the board now?
It would be, let me grab the document real quick.
I mean, I think in a lot of ways you're operating in this particular case almost like the SILT conservation for, what is that, the land trust?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, you're land banking it for
Yeah.
the future.
Well, and, to speak to that, we have 53 acres that are land banked right now, just north of all the holiday activity that we just don't have the capacity or resources right now to develop, but it's been on the books for the last 2 master plans.
Was that
So-
floodplain?
The holiday property or this one?
The holiday property?
Portions of it. It's along,
portions.
it's neighboring Eagle Creek, which is what we like.
Yeah.
But there are large portions of that are outside of the floodplain.
I just feel like we're kind
That
of
one-
speaking out of both sides of our mouth here. We want nature preserve, yet we need ball fields, right?
No.
And I'm not, no, not, I'm not talking about that with this individual wanting to give the land. I'm taking separate, but in terms of needs of the community.
I guess my point is,
it's a yeah.
irrespective of the needs of the community, there is a long-term future need to make sure that we're not developing every single square foot.
Yeah.
Yes.
And parks is like one of the few buffers that the city actually, the mechanism the city has to at least, prevent the full-scale development of all available property. That and floodplains to some degree.
Well,
And this
and-
is 60 acres that we can guarantee for the next 60 years at least, or 100 years, I guess, will not.
Perpetuity. We get it for perpetuity.
Perpetuity, yeah.
Yes,
we're name
it
restrictions.
cannot be beyond what it is. So I agree that there's a need to save green space in
And then
this.
people have to die first too, right? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sorry to say it's crass.
Whoa, what do you have in mind?
No, I'm saying like this isn't maybe something that wouldn't even kick in for another 15, 20, 30, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, could be, yeah.
So I think
Um,
it's more of if we don't accept this, then they probably could
Well,
potentially.
we've already accepted, it's already been,
This would be to formally accept it.
Accept it, okay,
We've
right.
went through all the due diligence of exploring, how are we going to
Gotcha,
make
okay.
this a park? How are we going to get to it?
I
We've,
mean, honestly, with as close as this to the school property, worst case scenario, maybe it would be consumed by, school property if that was a need for them at some point.
But it can't be, right, if we accept it?
no, I'm sure I think there's a line about what happens if we wanted to get offloaded, and that's not a
Is
permitted.
that not a
I
permitted?
don't think so, no. I
Yep,
think-
so
So
we're
no,
accepting,
We're accepting it.
we're
It's
accepting a
ours.
park,
Okay,
yes.
Yeah.
then-
Which, that has built our park system, I believe the equation's somewhere around 65% of donations versus acquisition or,
Acquisitions,
Well, and that figure right there is part of the reason why, when you look at Zionsville versus Carmel, again, Carmel's an excellent system, an award-winning system, and has some things we don't, in terms of facilities, destination facilities, things like that. We have 4 times the acreage of green space. And that's a legacy that we have chosen and been proactive in doing, not that we've just randomly come upon. And so I think it is part of our job to think about what are the needs today, which ball fields are a need. And then I know we're saying Zionsville Little League, and that's a different group, but the way we operate as a town is we sort of outsource our recreational programming. Not Mindy, not you, athletics. Our athletic programming, we rely on community partners to do that, right? Which, if we didn't have them, then we'd be trying to figure it out. So that's a need that is immediate, that we do have, that is quantifiable and has been. And the long-term goal of the comp plan, hopefully, and the prior master plans is to continue to acquire green space in areas where we know we're gonna grow. So if this is an area where we know we're gonna grow into the future, then to me, there's no solid argument of why we shouldn't accept it. And then we will have to figure out at some point what we do with it. But to your point, again, a unique and defining characteristic of the Zionsville populace that we saw when we did the Lions Park master plan, and that did come up again in the 5-year master plan, is that, I mean, folks here really do want to pass. I mean, their preferred amenities and facilities are nature-based, resource-based facilities and experiences. So, you know, if that's all we can do here, and that's sort of like what our legacy is, and that's what we need in the future, then to me, we accept this, and there'll be some questions.
Yeah, and I think
here.
something this doesn't preclude the sort of urgency of figuring out the ball field situation.
No, I think they're completely separate
Yeah.
discussions, yes.
I don't see any downside of accepting this at all. I mean, right,
Yeah.
somebody wants to
Yeah.
donate 60 acres to us,
The only
absolutely.
We'll
down-
figure
Yeah.
out what we do with it.
Yeah.
The reason we didn't accept it a year ago was we had no access to it. So we had to develop the access through the school to be able to know that if we're gonna have this piece of property, will we be able to get access to it? And, you know, yeah, so now we have access, and, the other side of it, it's next to the school property. I built the school. We're in the, you know, another great relationship that the Parks Department had, you know, with teaching outdoor recreation to the kids. I mean, it's just, it's perfect, so.
How do we solve the ball field gap though,
Yeah.
right? Because we're trying to balance the competing priorities of preserving nature, which totally appreciate, along with needing the programmatic pieces there. Like, how do we solve that, right? Like, I mean, you heard my bias. Let's say the project doesn't go through for the Pittman organization, and that's not available. How do we continue to work on solving the ball field issue?
Yeah, that's the hard thing, because it, you know, also falls in with the activity center too, right? The community center. They're, both those things are, you know, that the community wants, but there's only so much this department can take on, right?
I think that both of those needs are examples of, again, legitimate, quantifiable needs that in the context of our current funding capacity and municipal governance structure, that we will be unable to meet as a community outside of some sort of partnership agreement with a private party. And that could be in the form of, you know, a BOT agreement, or, you know, there's all these different things, with, especially when you get into the facility side, but, or a land donation. You know, so that's why, again, where I look at this, I look at that ball diamonds and I say, is that the perfect site? No. You know, even if we're allowed lights, it's still not the perfect site. But do we have the ability or the capacity as a town, even with that impact fee cash in hand, to provide even a sort of similar facility somewhere else? And the answer is no, we don't. We couldn't even afford the land to do that with the impact fees. So that's one of these things where it's like, when opportunities come up like this, we have to say, well, okay, can we meet that need in another way, or is this the best way we can meet that need right now?
Well, that would be my question, can we meet that need in the other way? I mean, it seems like development is happening in Zionsville regularly, and are there other large development projects, if they're gonna have an impact fee where a similar sort of opportunity can be met? I guess the difference here is that they're willing to put up a bunch of cash because they see the direct value to their project for this to be.
Absolutely.
Well, they have no other purpose for that land
Right,
either.
exactly.
That's what
So
we-
this is a way to get the project
it's
approved.
totally
They have no
true.
other
Well, and it
purpose for
also
that land.
seems like
Yeah.
that's their
It's
ticket to
business.
also getting it approved.
Yeah.
Their
Yeah.
project approved.
Right, yeah,
Right.
it's
Well,
So-
and
little
their
secret edge.
neighborhood, the value of their property development goes up, but they also have no other purpose for that land. So if that neighborhood was being developed identically somewhere else where there was not a runway protection zone, I think we'd be getting an impact fee check, and this wouldn't even be a discussion. There would be no partnership, there would be no land donation, there would be no, why would they? Because they could make a killing filling it with homes.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So again,
Same
the
thing
only
with
reason that
everybody.
we're getting
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of
Yeah, yeah.
delta of the
Yeah, yeah.
donation value is
It's a unique
because of
intersection
these
It
of
just
lands and
restrictions,
opportunities.
yeah.
So do you stay pretty tight with the planning folks? I mean, you have pretty good line of sight of other developments coming, right?
So I attempt to leverage the priorities of our park system with the development community any chance I get.
Okay.
That's why we're getting a public trail in the Bradley Estate project. That's why this board, probably more so than any previous board, is going to have these conversations for years to come, because, again, we can't do it alone. So, you know, we're getting donations, that is fantastic, but as far as the capital to build and meet the needs today, we're going to have to find partners, and it's going to be the development community most often.
And I'll be candid from a philanthropy side of things. Zionsville is a hard case to make for large regional philanthropy because it is a more affluent community.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's no need, we can't demonstrate need.
Yeah, and the challenge, and the unique challenge about Zionsville, well, actually, it's the same with all municipalities in Indiana right now, is that we do not have a dedicated sustains, we do not have great sustained public financing solutions for keeping parks up to a level that, to be nationally competitive. And so that is a long-term challenge. But yeah, so like every municipality struggles with this significantly in Indiana.
So what do we need to do tonight?
So we need to, we have a motion to,
Approve the testamentary transfer agreement.
I make a motion to approve the testimony transfer agreement.
Second.
and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. All right, next is Carpenter Nature Preserve drainage improvements.
Yes, so as you may recall, earlier this year, we did discuss an issue with a neighbor at Carpenter Nature Preserve where they are having waters stagnating on their property. There was a former legal drain that is no longer established, so they requested that we partner together and get that channel reestablished, essentially. So with Park Board approval, Amy worked to incorporate and create a temporary construction easement, which was provided in the packet this evening. So tonight's request is your consideration to have the Park Board President sign that temporary maintenance agreement, maintenance easement to allow the neighbor's contractor, which is a qualified contractor, to access Carpenter Nature Preserve and daylight their drainage pipe. Minimally invasive to Carpenter. There's an existing ditch line that this is going to feed into. Certified and approved by both our local stormwater team as well as the county who oversees the drainage board. And truly, there's no reason not to partner with a neighbor at this point and get this done, especially at no additional cost to the town. After temporary construction will likely be before you again in the future to establish a permanent maintenance easement so that they can maintain that in perpetuity.
All right,
Make a motion to approve.
I second.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. All right, other board business, Michael?
Yeah, I have something to share. I've let John, the mayor, Jared, and Amy know this, but as you all know, having some family stuff this year and just doing some reflection, realizing that I need to, you know, I agreed to a one-year term that the mayor asked me, and I think my family needs me to focus on them. I will say though, due to the nature of my work, Jared and I are going to continue to be collaborating because I do quite a bit of work with trails regionally, and so excited to cross paths literally and metaphorically with all of you. It's been a heavy pun night, I think. So I'm really grateful for the experience, and I'm sorry to leave after I know, you know, getting established in just communication style and camaraderie and understanding how people are thinking. So I realize that that will take time to onboard someone new. But again, grateful for the opportunity to serve. I'll be here till the December meeting, but I just want to let you know in advance. So.
We definitely appreciate everything you brought to us. You've brought some good insight, and you'll be missed. And we definitely look forward to, you know, having you in the background to keeping us with your knowledge.
I'll just keep remonstrating.
You know, the highlight for me is we now have like you on the record to say you can get your bike up over.
Yeah.
Like that was a flex. That was a good flex. I appreciated
I don't know if I
that.
still can.
Yeah.
On a good day.
Well, we'll be thinking about you and your family.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I mean, we're good, and I think it's just, as, you know, Atlas is now 18, this whole year we went through guardianship process, supplemental security income, like just realizing that as he's coming into adulthood, like we need to really come up with a plan and start building what that thing is for when he graduates from high school. So, yeah, incredibly grateful to the Zionsville community. Just, I guess like just kind of parting thoughts for this board is that I think one of the very unique things about this community is the way that we have felt accepted and embraced with a child with pronounced special needs, and we just encourage you as you think about your park system and the opportunities and what you provide, that always thinking about that full spectrum of needs and service, because I can know that just even, you know, what he has brought to, I always tell people, it's not what you can offer us, it's what we can offer you. And so like at Zionsville High School, I've seen what he's offered that community and how that community has grown. And I think this community would continue to benefit from finding ways to fully embrace and integrate people of all abilities. And so, yeah.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything else?
Just, next meeting, Jared, can we get an update just financially where we're at with all of our funds? Just so we
Absolutely.
kind of, we're coming down the home stretch here last couple months?
Yep.
Yep, thank you.
And speaking of funds, claims. Anyone get ever chance to review the claims? Any questions on the claims as they were submitted? Do we have a motion to approve claims as submitted?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
You want to go out with a second?
I'm going to be here in December. I'll go out. How about that?
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Claims carried. All right, next meeting will be November 13th, 7 o'clock. Do we have a,
Motion to
So
Motion to
move,
adjourn?
so move.
do we have a second?
second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Meeting adjourned.